On the 8th of December 2004, Damageplan were preparing to play a gig at the Alrosa Village nightclub for their new album in front of a few hundred people. However, this night would end in tragedy, with 3 people injured and 4 killed in a shooting that would take the life of guitarist Dimebag Darrell, causing a massive outpouring of grief in the metal world and a news article to be published that angered the community so much that one of the most passionate songs would be written as a warning. This is the story of Dimebag Darrell and Machine Head's song Aesthetics of Hate. Darrell Lane Abbott, otherwise known as Dimebag, would learn guitar from the age of 12 and become extremely proficient at it. He would begin his musical career by starting a band with his brother Vince as the drummer in 1983 called Pantera, which originally started as a glam metal outfit. They would release some records in the 80s such as Metal Magic, Projects in the Jungle and I Am the Night, which were met with mixed to negative reviews. Eventually they got a new singer with Phil Anselmo joining them and released one last glam metal album called Power Metal, before shifting their sound entirely to that groove metal genre they would become symbolic with, and of course their breakthrough record Cowboys from Hell was dropped along with vulgar display of power. This would make Pantera's name synonymous to that genre, and the band would continue touring and writing music for a few more years up until 2003, when they announced their split after 2 years of being on hiatus, stating the band had grown apart and difficulties working with Phil. During this time, the Abbott brothers worked on a new project called Damageplan and released an album in 2004, following it up with a local tour. The music on this album was meant to be a departure from their previous efforts in Pantera, which included setting up different mixes and guitar tones and even playing in a style that was unfamiliar to old fans. The album suffered a bit in promotion as the record label were expecting more music similar to Pantera, but the record label became very dissuaded once they heard the final product. Just like reinventing the steel, this record was self-produced by the Darrell brothers and co-produced by Sterling Winfield, which explains the stylistic changes in sound on hand for this record. The band would start touring for this record, and it was during their show in Columbus that a deranged individual named Nathan Gale attended the concert armed with a handgun. During the opening song, he rushed the stage, shooting and killing Dimebag Darrell in the process, along with Jeffrey Mayhem Thompson, head of security, Aaron Hulk, an employee at the venue, and Nathan Bray, a fan who rushed up to try and resuscitate Dimebag. After 3 minutes, police responded to the ongoing incident, shooting and killing the gunman in the process. But why did all of this occur in the first place?
We may never know the motive for this. It's just going to be one of the facts that we have right now. And unless he left a note or there's something he left somewhere else, we may never know the motive.
After the shooting, rumours did the rounds as to an enraged Pantera fan who couldn't stand the band splitting up and taking matters into his own hands. But this wasn't true. Another motive was believed to be that the perpetrator in question had grand delusions that the band was stealing his lyrics that he had come up with and were attempting to steal his identity as well. By some twisted sense of fate, the shooting also occurred exactly 24 years to the day after John Lennon was shot and killed, although this was ruled out as being any kind of motive. Ultimately, the reason behind this senseless killing is still unclear and may never be known. What is known is before the incident, this disturbed individual was discharged from the army after suffering from schizophrenia, where friends and family noticed very erratic behaviour from him in the months prior to this event. In the aftermath of this event, an outpouring of grief was shown in the metal community. Dimebag Darrell was an extremely iconic person in the industry and was amazingly talented with his abilities. And with his untimely demise, this would cement his legacy as, of course, one of the best that ever was. Former band member Phil Anselmo was not permitted to attend the funeral at the request, of course, of Darrell's family, and this was perhaps due to some of the negative interviews that were going on before this took place. After Dimebag's death, many albums and songs were dedicated to him, and even were written about this incident. Perhaps the most notable was Nickelback's track Silver Bullet, which utilised a solo written by Dimebag that he'd never used, and was donated to them by Vinny. Why he chose them to do this task is beyond me, but I'm sure that this will piss off the metal community to no extent. Zach Wilde from Black Label Society, who is Dimebag's guitar brother, wrote In This River for him, and the video clip even depicts the two as young kids struggling to swim up a river with only Zach surviving. Typo Negative would wait a few years to release Halloween in Heaven, in his memory of course, stating that he didn't want to exploit his memory of him at the time of its release. Many other bands would also dedicate their albums in his memory, such as of course Static X with Start a War, Disturbed with 10,000 Fists, and Crowbar's album Lifeblood for the Downtrodden. Ultimately, there is one song still that is truly a standout track in his memory, and that would be by the band Machine Head, that was written as a response to a news article. Before we discuss the reasons for the music, we must discuss the reason why it was written, and it is all down to one news article that was released around at the time of Dimebag's death. Most musical outlets would report on the news of Dimebag's passing, and would also remember the artist for his unique guitar techniques as one of the best guitarists in the world had ever seen, of course. However, not all musical publications would sing his praises, and this article in question came from the website known as Iconoclast. Now, you can't find the original source. In fact, if you were to Google search this, it would come up under Metal Disciple, and was simply titled Aesthetics of Hate, R.I.P. Dimebag Abbott, and Good Riddance by William Grimm. Yes, you heard that right. The main article nowadays can only be searched through a heavy metal website. But the main reason that the metal outlet was decrying the death of one of its biggest icons, and of course in a very scathing and at times distasteful article, is because the original source has been since taken down, and they want to keep this article in everyone's memory. So while it is the original article, it was not written by them. Instead, it has merely been republished for this rant. However, in the original article, the contributor goes on to say the following, and I will try to shorten this down to the important parts, but I will read the following verbatim. You have undoubtedly heard by now that a demented fan last week killed heavy metal guitarist Dimebag Abbott in Columbus, Ohio. I am extremely happy to hear the assassin was shot to death by a brave Columbus policeman, and I in no way want to engage in a blaming the victim scenario. I cannot deny there is much in Mr. Abbott's demise of one being hoisted on one's petard. The squalor in humanity, filth both in metaphorical and hygienic senses, depravity, ugliness, and ignorance of everything that heavy metal represents. Like how rap created a mindset amongst its devotees in which Mr. Abbott's assassination was an event that was all but waiting to happen. It was highly amusing and also terribly sad to watch on television fans conducting a vigil for the slain Mr. Abbott outside of the venue. It was an assemblage of ignorant, semi-human barbarians who were filthy in attire and manner, intellectually incoherent, and above all else hideously ugly to the point of physical deformity. Here is a definitive case in which the outer appearance of these fans accurately represents their hideousness of their soul. That the physical deformity of their ugliness was self-inflicted makes the spiritual tragedy of their misspent lives all the more tragic, but one can see why the heavy metal fans so closely identified with Mr. Abbott. He wasn't ignorant or an untalented possessor of a guitar and large amplifier system. Freakish in appearance, more simian than human, he was the performer of a type of entertainment that can be likened only to a gorilla on PCP, lacking subtlety, wit, style, emotional range, even the smallest iota or intellectual or a musical interest. Mr. Abbott was part of a generation that has confused sputum with art and involuntary reflex actions with emotion. Was the author smoking PCP when he wrote this? This is the biggest drivel of shit I've ever just read. I think I need to have a shower just to cleanse myself off from this. Clearly this guy's never heard of Cemetery Gates. This article continues on for many more paragraphs and would be considered a hit piece by everyone who read the article, stating that the original writer, William E. Grimm, is an egalitarian with a massive chip on his shoulder. In fact, he goes on to confirm as much in the article, citing their visceral preference in musical inspiration to Haydn or Bach or Mozart as we get a clearer picture for their musical tastes. After some diving, I managed to find the original piece, which included the author's email address, which I will not be sharing. But last year, I reached out to the author to confirm if they wanted to make a statement on the matter and set the record straight, and I was met with no response. So a few months ago, at least to when this was released, I reached out again to the author to try and hear their side of the story, and this time there was a response. I wish I had better news than what you are currently viewing on the screen. However, it does seem that the email address has since been disconnected. Perhaps we could have dwelled further into the mindset of an individual who seems at times as unhinged as he is a deranged man-child who thinks he knows best. From what I can tell in further research in the individual, he seems to have an obsession with a certain mustached man to the point that certain news articles have even denounced some of his news reports. It appears that he has also written some books about classical music back in the 90s which are available on Amazon, which clearly were never featured on Oprah's bestsellers list, and he even started his own website about himself, which again has been taken down. But all of this points to one thing, and that is that the man himself has most likely departed from his mortal coil and is no longer an oxygen thief. This is all very disparaging for those who seek closure, and sure, I could write many more paragraphs stating how much of an absolute tosser this individual was. But let's hear the real retort. In the long history of angry sounding metal songs, this is the angriest one ever recorded that I know of. Many songs have been made and of course sound vexed in manner, and other tunes draw inspiration from passionate experiences with their songwriters. But when Rob Flynn was writing this tune, he managed to surpass anything that he wrote beforehand, or others for that matter, tapping into his inner beast mode and going into a new level.
Even further beyond! I hope you want it.
When you open a song with "You tried to spit in the eye of a dead man's face, attack the way of a man not yet in his grave," then you should have known that you have done f***ed up. Flynn will not take this assault laying down and fires back the way he knows how, through his music, in perhaps one of the best songs I have heard from the band, from an album that I would strongly consider to be a top 3 for the metal albums of that decade. But that's a discussion, I guess, for perhaps a future episode of a Retro Reviews. Wink. The build-up is incredible during the bridge as both Flynn and Demmel fire off their solos like a 21-gun salute, and of course we edge into the second half of the song. Long live memories, live his freedom vicariously, defend tenfold, his honour will always uphold. These vocals are laid bare unto us, no longer in pain compared to the rest of the song, but rather in a somewhat raw anguish and a level of acceptance as we come to the precipice and slow outro that eventually fades away for the song. It's almost like we are hearing the 5 stages of grief in one tune, if these 5 stages were anger, rage, fury, resentment and wrath. Now I've heard some downright brutal shit in my day, and I've heard emotional pieces and others that were of course fiery with heated performances, but this delivery is pure, feverishly dosed venom. I don't think I can stress enough how Rob Flynn sounds on this record, as he vehemently defends his brother he lost, especially my thoughts exactly. Rob Flynn has since stated that while they received criticism for their very simple and, in his own words, Neanderthal-type lyrics, he goes on to state that it felt really good, and I guess it serves as his catharsis in this terrible chapter for metal. Now there is also another smaller reference to Pantera on that tune, with this song's title in a similar vein to Pantera's 5 Minutes Alone. The story behind that title is that Phil Anselmo was called out by a fan who was flipping him off during the entire performance, which caused some Pantera fans to jump the guy and beat the shit out of him. The father came out to the press and said, "Give me 5 minutes alone with that Phil Anselmo guy. I want to whoop his ass," and the rest was history. As you have already guessed here, the Machine Head song's title is taken directly from the name of the article mentioned earlier and throwing it back into the writer's face, and it's now the first thing that comes up when you Google search this, effectively hijacking this bitter individual's rant, thus helping erase his memories from all living beings, and perhaps this is the reason he will be remembered for. If there's any solace out of all of this depressing and at times infuriating moments in metal history, we can at least confirm that the memory of Dimebag Darrell lives on in all of us through his music and his memories, while the rantings of a decrepit old man and his ideologies have since been forgotten and will be more so over the course of a few short years. And the only memories that we will have eventually will be just how much of a fuckwit he was through the musings of Aesthetics of Hate by Machine Head and that musical piece. May Dimebag Darrell forever rock in peace with his brother Vinny by his side. And to you, Mr. Grimm, I hope you burn in hell. If you've enjoyed this content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to us, and stay notified for future music-related content because it keeps our manager happy at the end of the day. We are also on Discord, Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social platforms if you want to check us out. As always, people, you have a great day and stay spicy.